All right. So, welcome everyone to Gymnastics Mindset Academy. As I said before, my name is Stacy Fletcher, and I co-own Gymnastics Mindset Academy with Allie. And our mission is to develop happy, healthy gymnasts who know how to win in and out of the gym. And Allie and I both come from a world and a background of gymnastics. Gymnastics has been my life. I was a gymnast and then a coach. And then I got really into blogging about the elite level. And so I kind of followed that world via media and going to all of the big elite meets and even got to go to the Olympics. With that, and that's been my involvement in gymnastics. Allie, you want to share for 1 second yours?
Yeah, really quick. I was a 3-year level 10, and then I did Division III gymnastics out at University of Wisconsin La Crosse. And then I actually stayed there and coached for 5 years and got my master's degree in strength and conditioning. So I did teaching and coaching out there, and now I'm back in Michigan where it all started. I do a little bit of coaching at the level 8s, 9s, and 10s. I'm actually just coming off of maternity leave, so just getting back, but yeah, lots of different places, lots of different things. So now I'm here.
Yeah. And Allie and I and Kathleen are all certified life coaches through the Life Coach School. And so we'll tell you a little bit later, like how we went from certified life coaches to coaching gymnastics mindset. But it really is what creates the flavor of the mindset training that we do. The Life Coach School really bases most of their, teachings and tools on cognitive behavioral training, cognitive behavioral theory. So it's really that idea that everything that you're doing and all the results that you're getting in life are starting with the thoughts that you're thinking and the feelings that those are creating. And most of the time in life, we try to change our behavior. But in order to change our behavior, the most effective thing to do is actually change our patterns of thinking and then the feelings that that's creating. And so we really have taken this cognitive behavioral theory training approach along with life coaching, relationships. Gymnastics is such a tricky kind of sport. You are an individual athlete, and yet you're on a team, and sometimes you're doing team things, but then those are your like biggest competitors. The power dynamics between coach and kid are pretty extreme in gymnastics, much more so than a lot of other settings. And so we've brought all of that life coach training into what we do. We also both come from a deep gymnastics world. So we have a lot of sports psychology background from being, athletes and coaches ourselves. And then Allie and I both were, high-level gymnastics coaches. And so we bring in that experience as well. And we wrap it all together to create a very different kind of mindset training than what we found most people have been exposed to. So what we're here to do today, our goal today is first, in a simplistic way, to understand the brain. We want you to understand the brain at a level. Some of you, I know some of the parents that we work with, you're like cognitive behavioral therapists, psychologists, like you have an even deeper understanding than maybe we do. So I don't want to assume that you don't, but we want to help you understand your gymnast's brain. Because what I hear from so many parents is like, I don't get how she thinks. I don't get how he thinks. I don't understand it. It's so foreign to me. And Allie and I were both gymnasts, and we are both very typical gymnasts. So we understand the gymnast brain at a pretty deep level. And then this is what we do day in, day out. We work with gymnast brains all day long. And so we have a pretty deep understanding of how they think, and we want to share it with you. We also want to teach you one of our most effective tools. Today, you're going to learn the thought ladder. And one of the things that we've heard from people a lot in mindset training is we've done a lot of mindset training before, and so much of it is like, think positively, but like we try and we can't. So this tool specifically bridges that gap and teaches them how to actually go from those negative thoughts that are getting in their way to positive thoughts. And we want to teach you that tool. I do want to say this, we're not going to teach it to you in the way where we then expect you to go teach it to your kid. We actually have what we call the Secret Podcast. It's a 5-session audio series. It's totally free, called How to Actually Think Positively, where we teach your gymnast. So if you haven't gotten that, I'm going to give you the links afterwards to sign up for that. Go get that. And you can let us teach your kid how to do it. But what we really want you to do is have a knowledge and an understanding of it, and then a way to support them as they try to work through it. And then we want to extend an invitation and tell you about a special opportunity. So 2 things. We're going to have a bonus training if you stay all the way to the end. That is a favorite of our gymnasts that we're going to share with you. And if you stay to the end and you give us a review of this training, we're actually going to send you the workbook that you can use right alongside the Secret Podcast with your gymnast, the worksheets that we use in our program. So stay all the way to the end. We promise it will be worth your while. Be ready to write answers in the chat. You can ask questions anytime. And like I said, Allie and Kathleen will jump on in. So apart from that, Allie, Kathleen, anything to add? We ready to get started? Awesome. Let's get started. So help your gymnast actually think positively. We said mindset training for gymnastics moms because that's who's usually here. But of course, everyone is welcome. We love dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, coaches, all the people. And I just want to give a little shout out to Leah Clapper. She is the gymnast you see here featured. Leah has done a lot of work with us, and she is amazing. She was a Florida Gator. And this last year, she let us actually just broadcast her mindset training sessions live into the public in a podcast we called Lessons with Leah. It's fantastic. She is amazing. And more than anyone, Leah embodies a gymnast who thinks positively. So we had her, be our role model for this particular training. You're going to see her throughout. So why your gymnast thoughts matter. Your gymnast's brain controls everything. And while we kind of know that, we also don't really think about that. Right now, I'm talking to you. My brain is controlling my breathing. It's controlling the words that are coming from mouth, the hand gestures that I can't stop no matter how hard I try. It's controlling how much I think. It's controlling literally every move I make. And with your gymnast, their brain is controlling every move they make. And yet, in the gymnastics world, we spend very, very, very little time training gymnasts how to deal with their brain, even though it's the most critical component. You've all experienced that when you know your gymnast can do a skill, and yet she has a huge mental block or she just can't get it because her brain is feeding her doubt and fear. Or your gymnast has her routine down cold, but she cannot compete it to save her life in competition. It's the brain that's getting in the way. And part of the reason for that is that the subconscious brain runs about 95% of the show. So right now, I'm not conscious of most of the things my brain is thinking and most of the thing my brain is doing while I'm talking to you. And the subconscious brain, or the primary brain, the animal brain, there's lots of the unconscious brain, people call it different things. But it is the part of your brain that's controlling, all that's going on below the surface. And it has one main objective, and that objective is to keep you alive. And so that part of your brain isn't necessarily in line with bigger goals. It's not in line with a lot of the things that are needed. In fact, that part of your brain cares the most about keeping you safe, using as little energy as possible, and doing what feels good in the moment. All of which is directly working against your gymnast when she's out there trying her hardest. And so her natural wiring is going to be against her in gymnastics. And so that's one of the reasons it's so important to help her train her brain. Their success is so much more dependent on their thoughts than on anything else. And this is the reason it's so hard to think something new. So, we hear people say, I've tried to think positively. I try to think I got this. I tell myself, and I just don't believe it. What happens is your brain creates what's called a neural pathway. And I like to compare those to roads. I look out the window every day and I have a freeway running by. And so it's just this big freeway that if you have a thought that you've been thinking a lot, or a belief that you really think, that part of your brain has this deep neural pathway, and it's like a freeway. It's well lit, it's well paved, it's easy to go on, and your brain wants to keep on thinking that. So when you're trying to get your gymnast to a new thought, or when your gymnast is trying to think a new thought, she literally has to build a new road. So it's like, hey, you can take the freeway to get to the gym, or you could drive through everyone's front yard. Like, driving through everyone's front yard is hard. It's a lot of work, and your brain, second rule, wants to use as little energy as possible. It does not want to develop a new neural pathway when it thinks this one is just fine. And so it actually takes work to get to a new thought pattern, and then especially to build that new road, and then to use that new road often enough that the old road starts drying up. You think about going out to the wilderness and, seeing a pathway that's no longer used, and you're like, is that a path? I'm not really sure. Well, it just it's like the less it's used, the more it will dry up, and then the new road will start to become that. So this is what happens. You tell, your coaches will be, you've got it, just think positive. It's like trying to set a gymnast up to, like, hey, have you ever done a back handspring on the floor? No, go up and do it on the high beam. Like, there's progressions and there's steps in order to get there, and to try to get from no road to using that road all the time actually takes practice and work to get there. And so that's why we've created this thought ladder in order to do that. So the first step that we use is this idea of just even helping them understand their thoughts. And I'm not actually going to spend much time on this one. I actually kept it in here to remind you that we do have all of these worksheets that we can send you at the end. So you might want to be thinking about, what would I say in a review? Doesn't have to be good. We'll send it to you if you get us a bad review, I promise. But we'll send you this workbook at the end. And this is one of the things we talk about later on. So, tips and questions you might ask them. The first step is just helping them begin to realize that what they have is a thought, and their thoughts aren't facts, and their thoughts aren't them. Your brain has, they say, I don't know how you measure this, 60,000 thoughts a day, and we're unaware of at least 95% of those. Our brains aren't us. We have heard things that our brain offers to us. Our brain is trying to keep us safe. In fact, this is more for us as adults than it is for the kids, but most of your subconscious brain is completely developed by the time you're 7 years old. So most of those thought patterns are from when you're 7 and younger. And so our thoughts aren't us. And so beginning to help your gymnast make a distinction between that, just in how you talk about their thoughts. So when you talk about their thoughts as their thoughts and not facts, when you approach what they say with interest and curiosity, instead of telling them not to think or feel something, and we do it in the best of intention, like, oh no, you don't need to have any doubts. You've got this. Like, their thoughts are presenting them, and we want to help them learn to be observers, to be separate from their thoughts, and to have a lot of curiosity about it. And then we also want it to be normal and understandable that they're going to have a lot of different negative thoughts. So remember how I said the brain, its main job is our survival? So because its main job is our survival, it's constantly on the lookout for any threat. It's just looking and looking and looking. And so that's what gives us such a negative bias, where we're always looking for all the things that could go wrong, all the what ifs we call them, is because our brain is just trying to keep us safe by looking ahead at anything that could go wrong. And so one of the things that happens is then they think it's bad that they're having these negative thoughts. So then they make the negative thoughts even worse because they're like, well, I shouldn't be thinking that. No, it's totally normal. We're like, oh yeah, your brain just says that. I like to have the kids name their primary brain, like a name, like mine is Sweet Stacy. Oh, Sweet Stacy, kind of the bless her heart. But to be able to kind of start creating this little differentiation. And I say, oh, Sweet Stacy says the darndest things around some of my negative thoughts. So here's some ideas of things that you might say. What an interesting thought your brain is offering you. Oh, I'm so curious as to why your brain is offering you that. Why do you think it came up with that? I notice your brain is telling you that you can't get this new skill. I wonder if what your brain is telling you is a fact or a thought. What do you think? And again, we don't have to be like super like, here's what happens when you start learning this stuff. Every time you're like, well, that's just a thought. That's just a thought. It's not really helpful. It's more just beginning to suggest to them this idea. Oh, maybe that's not a fact. Maybe their brain is just offering them something, a thought, and then to begin helping them separate themselves from that. Again, feel free, pop questions in as we go. I'm going to keep on going, especially since we got started late. I was already not sure how I was going to get through all this. So I'm going to keep on going, but please pop questions in, and Allie and Kathleen will answer them. And then I will take a moment towards the end and come back and answer anything as well. So, all right. Identifying the beliefs. So we talk about wanting to think positively and build this new road, but you got to first know where you're building it to. What's the new belief that's actually going to help get the results that you want? So, and then we're going to identify where you started. So it's literally like creating a map. Where you want to go and where are you now? And so identifying these 2 points is a really important piece to our thought ladder. So I'm going to give you a peek at the thought ladder, and then we're going to go through it a bit and a little bit more. But this is the bottom and the top of our thought ladder. So the bottom is the current belief. The top is what we want them to believe. And the top is going to be a thought that feels really amazing in their body and helps them really feel like they can do it. But it doesn't have to be, I've got this. It can be something, a little more like sideways. Like one of the girls that I've been helping her with her thought ladder these last couple of weeks, she's really afraid. She's a very powerful tumbler, and her brain has told her that her power is dangerous. And so her current belief is that my power is dangerous. If I go too hard, I'm going to get hurt. And so I don't want to get to the place of like, I can go my hardest all the time. That's probably even for a thought ladder really far. But what we've worked at is I'm safer and more successful when I use my power. And we talked through all the reasons why. So that's just the example that comes up. But, easy, simple one is I can't do this skill. I've got this skill. But the top one, if they actually believed it, is going to fuel them to do the thing that they really want to be able to do. So their current belief is simply the negative thing they're currently thinking that's preventing them from doing what they want to do. They probably will struggle to see a positive new belief. And so, if they're going through this training, like we can help them with that, but also you can help inspire them towards a new belief. And I'll give you some ideas in how to do that. But when you begin seeing it for them in an optimistic, vision-filled way, and then letting it be okay that they don't see that for themselves yet. So that we do that is like painting a picture for them and then like believing it and intending it for them. Our belief in them is so powerful. And when we are not telling them not to have their negative beliefs, but we are painting a picture for their positive beliefs in a very casual way that completely says, I don't expect you to believe this, it just makes their brain start going, oh, well, maybe there is another way to think about this. Oh, and it'll start softening. Now, I'm going to give you things to say and then I'll give a little disclaimer. So here are a few things you might say. Wouldn't it be really cool to believe that you're great at bars? You can totally do a pack. Wouldn't it be really cool to believe that your acro series was easy? Another one. I wonder what the future you who already has this bar release will be believing. I wonder what the future you who is standing on top of the podium, I wonder what the future you who already has that college scholarship will be believing. And then, depending on your relationship with them, painting a picture. I am seeing you in the future. And then a vision of them that's like detailed. So let's say what they really want to believe is that they can get a college scholarship to a specific school. I am seeing you in the future anchoring beam for Georgia. And I'm in the stands. We're at the one of the home meets and cheering you on. I can just see it. I can smell the popcorn. I can, see the arena. Is it okay if I believe that for you until you can believe it for yourself? And again, that gives them the permission. They don't need to believe it, but it helps give them the impetus and the idea that you're believing that for them. Now, here's the thing. Most of you here have teenage girls. And I know that when mom says these things, they're just probably going to roll their eyes at you. Now, some of you have a different relationship with your teenage girl, or you have younger kids and they're totally, everything mom says is the most amazing thing in the world, and you're easily going to be able to do this. Others of you who have teenagers and you're like, yeah, I can't imagine saying this to them. It's okay if they roll their eyes at you. This is going to help them believe in themselves and communicate to them how much you believe in them. You just want to make sure and do it in a way that doesn't create pressure that you're expecting them to believe it too. In fact, I always say, I know you don't believe this yet. That's totally fine. I want to believe it for you. And I think when you do that, it helps bring it down, but expect them to roll their eyes. That's okay. That's not a problem. But just whatever way you can do it in your own way to paint a picture of the vision that you are believing for them. So then we start on the bottom, loosening the current belief. So the biggest part on this step is helping her see that her current thought is a thought. Once her brain finally can be like, oh, that's just a thought, and maybe it's not true, she actually can move forward from it. But as long as she's convinced it's a fact, it will be very difficult to make the next step. So our first step is all about loosening the current belief and having it. So we want to help their brain entertain the possibility that it is just a thought and that it could be wrong. So we have them do this worksheet where we have them write out in what ways could you be wrong about your current belief. And then we have them start with this thing. Every time they notice they're thinking their current thought, I notice I am thinking that I can't swing bars or that I can't get this release and I might be wrong. And that's it. They don't need to and so I love to have them write this out, literally writing lines. Tell it to themselves with feeling into the mirror, looking into their own eyes. And then just every time they hear their brain say their current thought, just go, oh, I noticed that I'm thinking that I might be wrong. And then as they do that a lot, and even you, oh, I noticed that you're thinking that. I wonder if you might be wrong. You probably don't want to tell them they're wrong if they're the teenager that will roll their eyes, but oh, I noticed that you're thinking. Oh, I noticed that you're thinking. So again, making a distinction between your gymnast's thoughts in their brain, talking about their thoughts as thoughts, avoid agreeing with them that it's a fact, true, or the way things are. And here's one of the sneaky ways we kind of add in that we do that. They get in the car and they're like, I had such a terrible day. I can't get this bar release. We're like, oh, I'm so sorry, honey, that you can't get this bar release. And we're just agreeing with them, but we're actually helping their brain then cement that this is a fact, they can't get this. So we'd just be like, oh, I'm sorry that you've been thinking you can't get this bar release. It's just very subtle. You've been thinking. That's it. We throw in a little past tense in there and then thinking. And it just makes their subconscious brain go, oh, I've been thinking. Oh, it's not a fact. So we just want to avoid agreeing with them that their negative belief is true. Subtly shift to past tense. I know you've been thinking. I know it's been a struggle. And then direct their brains towards positive instead of away from negative. And here's what I mean by that. What an interesting, oh, this one, sorry, was the older slide. Those work here too, but so I hear that you've been thinking. I wonder what your brain has been telling you as a fact. What do you think? I wonder if we can come up with any evidence that maybe it's not true. I bet you can think of 2 reasons that your thought might not be true. And so what I mean by direct their brains towards the positive instead of to the negative, I just told you that away from the negative. But then you might say like, what might be evidence that this new belief is true, and help their brain move towards that positive. All right, now the thought ladder. The thought ladder is a powerful tool that helps them take small steps. And I started at the bottom of it. The goal is to work up through each level one at a time. And it doesn't matter how long it takes them to get up. Sometimes you move up really quickly. Sometimes it takes months. We just stay on the same level until our brain believes the next one. So we start here with the ones I showed you. I notice that I'm thinking and I might be wrong. And the top one is the belief they want to have. The second step, it is possible that the new belief. So I'm going to use an example. Let's say, okay, somebody give me, my brain is blank. So somebody give me in the chat something that their kid is struggling with right now. Back handspring on beam. Thank you. Okay. So their current thought maybe would be, I can't get this skill. It's too scary. Let's go with that one. I have that a lot where kids are like, it's just scary. So I notice that I'm thinking it's just scary and I might be wrong. It's possible that it's actually easy. So maybe the new belief is my back handspring on beam is actually easy. And the current thought that they're thinking is that it's scary. Or maybe, I guess if it's scary, then it's safe. Ooh, I know. Okay, sorry, it just took me a second. This is one of my favorite ones to work with them on, is how they can keep themselves safe in the skill they're scared of. So, so we're going to say that their bottom thought is my back handspring is scary. And the top thought is I can keep myself safe in my back handspring. So I notice that I'm thinking my back handspring is scary and I might be wrong. It is possible that I can keep myself safe in my back handspring. And then they move up to, I'm learning how to believe that I can keep myself safe in my back handspring. I'm committed to thinking that I can keep myself safe in my back handspring, or I believe more often than not that I can keep myself safe in my back handspring. I actually really love that I believe more often than not, but some kids get tripped up on that because they think it means I believe 100% of the time. They think that that means up here above level 5. And so more often than not means, 51% of the time. But if they get stuck on that, then I move them to the I'm committed to thinking. And then the top one is their belief. So we have them fill out the thought ladder exactly like that, write out each one. And then the rest of the time, we're having them work on moving up the ladder. So what we have them do is fill it all out and then read up as high as they can before their brain objects. And then when their brain objects, write down what their brain is telling you about the belief, what the arguments are, and then just poking holes. Why might that be untrue? So we have them circle where they currently are, write an arrow to the top one, and then now we're working on the one above that. And here, this one I put more. I like to keep it simple to the other ones, but sometimes some of these vibe a little bit better. So these are different options. Okay, so sometimes they can move quickly. Often it takes weeks of consistent work to move towards the top. And I have found if they work on this consistently every day, they usually can get to the top in 2 to 3 weeks. Which, if you could imagine, once they're at the top and they think I can keep myself safe in my back handspring and they totally believe that, they got the skill. I mean, if they have it physically and the problem is more on the mental side, they've got the skill. So in 2 to 3 weeks, they've got it. Versus 2 to 3 weeks of lessons when they're scared of it can not get them very far at all. So helping them like really see the value of putting in the work to it. But sometimes it takes longer, especially if the belief they're working on is something deeper, like I'm a good gymnast, or I am, worthy, or I can compete well, when they have a lot of evidence that they can't, or if they have a deep mental block. I like to have them write it out lots of times. I like to have them say it with conviction into the mirror, like look themselves in the eye and say it, put it on a sticky note, creating phone wallpaper, and just saying the new thought as often as possible, the arrow, the one that they're moving towards. So if they're here on it's possible that, I want them saying, I'm learning how to believe all the places that they can. So here's ways that you can support them. You can reflect the line that they're on. So I really believe it's possible for you to think that you can keep yourself safe in your back handspring. I love that you're learning to believe that you can keep yourself safe in your back handspring. It's cool that more often than not, you seem to think that you can keep yourself safe in your back handspring. I always knew you could keep yourself safe in your back handspring. So I'm just taking those same thought ladder lines and I'm just reflecting them back to them, in a positive belief-filled way. All right. And getting to the positive belief, getting to the top. So just like anything else in gymnastics, your gymnast has to practice to get to the new belief. Remember, we're going through, I live in Florida, so I usually tell them, like, you're creating a new road through the swamp and the jungle. It takes work. Those neural pathways have to actively build new ones and stop using the old ones to change a thought. And so we've got some questions again in this worksheet, in this workbook that we can send to you. And you can also use those questions with your gymnast on a regular basis, depending on, how that feels for you. But some of the questions that we have is, again, just having them poke holes in it. So the ones on the left, having them poke holes in it and then answering the opposite. So if they're, if their thought is back handspring is scary on beam, having them poke holes in why that might not be true and then what evidence they have that they could keep themselves safe. We have them do the writing a message from your future self. We have them do what would I need to think to move myself to be a 10 out of 10? And when they do this work every single day, it moves them along the ladder much faster. This process can go through a phase that feels tedious and boring for your gymnast, and that's to be expected, just like drills. I always just tell them, you're building a new road. Part of that isn't super fun. So for you, just encouraging them to stick with it, but by helping them re-see that vision. So we're re-putting that vision out there for them. We're re-putting the vision of why this is going to be so helpful, why this is going to be so amazing. And then it's okay to help them come up with the reasons why their new belief is true. Sometimes they really can't. So this gymnast that I was working with on, why her power was safer. We talked through doing her back tuck. If she did a back tuck, she was afraid of her back tuck at the time. So if she did a back tuck on the trampoline, did it feel easier or harder than on the tumble track? And then did it feel easier or harder to do a back tuck on the tumble track than on the rod floor and then on the regular floor? And so then I was like, what's the difference between each one? And she's like, oh, I have more power on the trampoline. I'm like, yeah, when you have more power, you actually feel safer because you have way more time in the air. And so we come up with all the reasons, and sometimes they need help with that. Sometimes they have a hard time coming up with positive reasons. And so if you can come up with some of them for them, that can be helpful. But it is the most powerful when they come up with those reasons. So I try to let them do it first. So things that you could ask: what has your brain been telling you about why your new belief isn't true? I bet you could answer it back. Why are those reasons not true? What is your future self who believes this telling you today? And these do change day to day. Like sometimes it's a lot easier, other days it's harder. They're going to fluctuate. They don't just climb up the ladder. Sometimes they climb up and down and up and down. Here's one that's been super powerful. If another gymnast was struggling to believe this, what might her brain have been telling her? And then what would you tell her in response to that? I tend to get a long way with that question. So I'm going to review this. In review, the thoughts and beliefs create the results that you are seeing for your gymnast. So the results that you see out on the floor are coming from what they're thinking and believing. To change her results, she's got to change the thoughts. Thoughts and beliefs can be really difficult to change. And the way that you can get there faster is by taking small steps and practicing them often. The thought ladder starts with the current belief, questions that current belief, offers that another belief might be possible, moves toward that belief by actively trying to learn it, continues to move towards it by believing it more often than not until it finally arrives. And then that new belief is fully cemented as it begins to create the evidence that proves it in the results. So here's what I mean by that. I can keep myself safe on my back handspring. We get up pretty close to that. And then as she sees that she can do it, and she keeps herself safe, and she keeps herself safe, and she keeps herself safe, she keeps herself safe, then it becomes easier to believe. The evidence backs up the belief. The belief actually has to come first, but then the evidence strengthens it until then it's a belief that they no longer even need to think about anymore. So